When you open your Unit 1 IP Start, you'll notice that your objects are all green. Okay, they're either green or white. This indicates that there is no material attached to these whatsoever, and I have destroyed all UVs on these things. So there's no UVs, there's no material, there's no nothing. This is a blank slate that we're going to start at. So in order to get started, we're going to need a material, and we're going to need a texture. Well, in the last video you made a texture. It was a checkerboard, and we'll bring that in first. I use the Windows Explorer feature. Go out to my desktop and find said texture. In this case, you should have the same texture. And in this case, I have Game 245. Okay, there's the texture that I need, and I'm just going to click and drag it into the texture window. This texture window is located under Window, Rendering Editors, Hypershade. Okay, and this is the Hypershade menu. So please open it and drag your texture into this tab. There's two tabs here. There's Textures and Materials. The other ones we're not going to be using in this class, but know that they are there. They just indicate where shading networks are. Okay. So in the Materials tab, we have a material. It's called Lambert 1. We never mess with Lambert 1. It's for modeling. Okay. So anytime we make a new piece of geometry, it's automatically assigned material Lambert 1. In this case, we need to make a new Lambert. So I click that, and then right click it, rename it, and we're going to call this UV underscore MAT. So UV material. And then we're going to go to the Textures tab and middle mouse button click and drag it over to the ball and let go. And attach it to color. So you're going to need a mouse that has a middle mouse button, click and drag. Don't think that you're going to get away with this class without having one. If you have a Mac, it is a middle mouse button, click and drag too. If you have the laptop with the weird kind of like you could touch it and it moves around, I forget what the tablet variation, you're not going to be able to use that for this class. Please buy a mouse. Okay, so in this case, I have this, and I'm going to assign it to these meshes. Now, there's a couple ways we can do that. One, we could highlight all the pieces of geometry at once, like this, and then we can right-click on this and say Assign Existing Material. That's one way to do it. Another way we could do it is we could take a middle mouse button, click and drag this out to each of the objects, and they're going to turn white. Okay. So green equals no material. That's a warning color within Maya. White means no UVs. Alright, so I'm going to just highlight all the pieces of geometry and then right click on that node and say Assign Existing Material, and I do that on my secondary monitor. So, bam. Alright, so they're white. What we have to do is now put UVs on each one of these. These meshes all have to have the same resolution. They're just about the same every time we do one of these. In this case, it's the same procedure over and over again, but really, for a new student, it's kind of a hurdle to get over this workflow. Once you do it a few times, you get very used to it. It certainly doesn't happen or occur on every one of these meshes. Everyone's different, but the UVs have to be unwrapped for these objects. In Maya, we unwrap by basically auto mapping and then reconstructing the UVs back to a simple shape. So one of the rules are we can't have a whole lot of seams. Okay. Another rule is we have to keep them on the 0 to 1. So we'll get into that. For right now, let's start with this mesh right here. And let's go create UVs, automatic mapping. Suddenly the checkerboard appears, and now we can go into Window, UV Texture Editor. And we'll see that we have these little boxes. Okay, these indicate each face on the mesh, but they are all separated and exploded. Okay, we don't want that. We want to be able to put these back together to make relative sense of them. And anytime that these shells are broken off the original shell, it becomes a seam. And seams are really bad to have in games, or in scenes in general. So let's go into this. Image, dim image. This will make it so we can see these a little bit better, and we can start reconstructing them. The first thing we need to know is which one is the front of the mesh. In this case, if I highlight one of the faces, you'll see that it highlights one of its existing faces over here. This indicates this shell, and that's what it's called, is part of the front. Some selection tricks that you're going to be using are as follows. One, you can go to UV and highlight one UV. So that's right click, go to UV, highlight one UV. And then you can hold Control and right click and go to shell. W on the keyboard will allow you to move this shell around. Now notice the shell is, okay, so there's a big face right here, and there's a big face here. This indicates that really this face here is this face here. So the shell is rotated. Now I like to keep all my shells rotated to whatever the part looks like. In this case, I would click this button twice and try to see if this is the top face. Yep. So this shell is now correct. Let's do that to the next piece. So UV, highlight a UV, Control right click to shell. You can move it over. In this case, it's on the other side. So let's flip it around. Highlight a face. It's there. It's on the side. And then we're going to take this and rotate it the other way. Good. Now we're going to take these additional shells and merge them with the original. We do that by going like this. If you highlight an edge, and another by holding Shift, it'll highlight an existing co-edge. Okay? So this edge and these edges are the same edge. Then you can use this button right here called Move and Sew. You'll notice that as soon as you hit that, it moves and sews it over to the original shell. Alright, good. Name of the game is to get rid of all the little shells and merge them into at least two of the bigger ones. Alright, now let's go like this. So these can be moved over to here. Edge, edge, edge. Move and sew. I'm just going to rotate this part. Now, notice that I only highlight the 3 and never at the end. I'll show you why. So if I was to highlight the last one, look what would happen. This edge and this edge would join together. We do not want this. When we see this, it's called a stretched UV. Anytime that we have that, it's going to cause distortion within the texture. So we try to avoid that as best as possible. So I'm going to undo that. In this case, I have 4 remaining shells, and we can't have any overlap. So check this out. If I highlight an edge here and an edge here, and hit move and sew, look what happens. The two edges overlap each other, and I could see this by going into this button right here. Notice that this is a darker blue. Anytime that I have an overlapped UV, it also causes havoc with rendering and workflows later on. So we can't have any overlap. I'm going to undo that. In this case, we'll do this. Let's put 2 here, and then we'll put 2 here. That way there's no overlap. Now we can put the UVs back onto the 0 and 1, which is this square right here. So, as I said, one of the laws are that we're going to stick to the 0 and 1 and use it only. In this case, I'm going to line up the UVs just like that, and that is a completed part. Now you can see that there's many parts here, so each one of these has to be done for each one of these. And luckily, I'm going to go through each and every one of them with you. So, because at a very beginning level, each part is a little bit different, and each one has its unique attributes that must be met. So, this is shape 1. We'll go a little faster as it progresses, but for right now, I need you to go to the next video.